Okay, you guys, I'm going to show you how to replace an alternator on a Subaru SVX. I'm not really having to replace my alternator, I'm just going to clean some of the sensors that are right below it, but I have to remove the alternator, so I figured I would show you guys how to do it. Anyway, if you guys haven't seen the Subaru SVX, it's probably one of the coolest cars ever made from 1992 to 97. But here we go. I'm gonna set this tripod here. Alright, first thing we have to do is take this cover off. There's two 10mm bolts, one here, and we'll do that real quick. One thing that you're gonna need, this is gonna be helpful, a little swivel. There's a 10mm and a 12mm socket here, and this is a little magnetic tray, which is just super helpful to keep track of your bolts. So we'll just put that right there. Cool, and this is just a guard, so it just comes right off. Okay, so let's look at the alternator here. So to get this thing off, there are two bolts. There's a 12mm here and one right here. This bolt just goes through right here. It doesn't actually, it attaches to this side of the alternator. This one goes all the way through and has a nut on the back, which is attached to this little thing here. But really what we want to do first before we start taking the bolts off is disconnect the electrical from the alternator. So we're going to disconnect here and here. And you know, since we're working on the alternator, you also want to disconnect the negative battery cable. So I'm going to do that real quick here. Okay, those are the two electrical connectors. So the next thing we have to do is we have to get the belt off of here. And I'm going to zoom in a little bit here. So this is the belt tensioner. But before you start to undo this, you have to loosen this nut on this pulley, which is attached to this thing right here. So if you start trying to crank this, you're not going to get anywhere. You have to loosen this, that's a 10mm bolt there. And it's a really tight clearance in between the fan and here, so there's really no way to get a socket in here, so we're just going to use a crescent wrench. So I'm going to grab one of those, loosen this up, and then this is where the swivel is going to come in handy. I'm going to put a swivel on right here on my extension and just crank this open real quick. So here we go. Okay, actually that's a 12mm bolt, so I'm just going to loosen this up by hand. Alright, should be loose enough, we'll keep that for later. So I've got some extensions here. So we're going to loosen up this belt now. I'm going to put the 12mm on this swivel, and then yeah, maybe I'll just use, I think I'll use this long one, see what happens. We're gonna have to move the camera in just a second. Oh my god, I'm gonna have to get a new one of these. Okay, here we go. If you had to do this by hand and without a drill, I mean, it's painstaking. So just get a little extension that fits on your impact drill, and it's gonna save you a lot of time. And that's probably loose enough. Okay, belt's off. So the next thing we want to do is I want to take off this bolt first, and you could just leave this bolt in, loosen it. I'll show you here. This thing just can swivel up, so cool. So I'm going to loosen this one up just a tiny bit. There we go. And you know, I don't know if most cars are like this, but you can then just swivel this up. And I'm just trying to access these sensors right here. I'm going to take them out and clean them. But if you're going to take your alternator all the way out, you're going to need to take this bolt out. And heck, let's just do it anyway. Always like to hold on to the nut on the rear, but it's got this whole bracket. So this is the whole bracket mechanism. Just keep that together. Now the alternator is going to come all the way out. Here we go. Yep, there she is. So now I've got clear access to these, there's some crank angle sensors and stuff in here, so I'm going to pull these out and clean them all up. Anyway, of course the install is just the reverse, so yeah, good luck everybody.